Welcome to part 3 of my wobbly world. Obviously, we're all looking around for solutions and for preventive measures against this sort of a crisis. Well, it's worthwhile remembering how a simple boycott threat by a few million consumers, especially in Europe, forced Shell Oil to change direction on the Brent spar. So this shows that we are actually not at all powerless. Now, one important further step is this. Roughly half of the world's population has enough income that they can put a little bit of money in the bank. However, when you put the money in the bank, you really have no clue what happens with it later on. Maybe it's being invested in a factory that makes mosquito nets to save people from malaria. But maybe it's also being invested in a factory that makes landmines or perhaps small arms in order to maim and kill people in Africa. You don't know, you have no say about what happens with your money, and therefore you are powerless. This is, of course, something which can be changed, given the will to do so. And the hope there would be to get the corporations in a double bind between consumers on the outside that are watching them and small investors on the inside, and to try to slowly but surely bring the top management of these super corporations under control. One point should be made here right away. There is essentially no difference between corporate bureaucrats and government bureaucrats. That's all empty ideological posturing by groups like the Republican Party or so. It's meaningless. A bureaucrat is a bureaucrat, no matter whether he draws his salary from a government or from a corporation. All right. Now, here's a list of 5 ideas for, what we should be doing in the foreseeable future. Obviously, the first one, I've already mentioned it, everybody's income should be limited to X thousand euros or dollars per month. We can debate what number X should be, but there needs to be an upper limit. It is ridiculous that some people should earn up to $1 million a month. I don't care. Second, people's fortune, the money that people have in the bank and in other forms, their wealth should be limited to Y million euros. Again, here it's important to realize that if we allow unlimited wealth in private individuals' hands, that means we're allowing them very nearly unlimited power. And certainly the power embodied in, let us say, $10 million or 10 million euros is a lot more important than the power in a .45 caliber pistol. So how can we have laws about gun licensing, but no laws about licensing millions of dollars? That's very silly. Third point, when a natural or a legal person applies for a loan, the amount of money that they can borrow should be limited to Z times the income that they declared for taxes in the year that preceded the loan application. You'll notice that that in itself would have prevented the so-called subprime crisis. Now, fourth point, as I mentioned before, we need to empower small investors. We need to restructure the system in such a way that small investors can effectively vote and bring under control the corporations of which they own tiny little shares. And the fifth point, of course, is we need industrial democracy. We need to have the right to vote on the internal policies and on the strategies of big enterprises. We need to give that to the people who work there too. Do you seriously think, for an example, that bank employees would have voted in favor of these crazy strategies which are now destroying their jobs? Also, obviously, it would be very important to empower the people who are working in the media, to give them a chance to vote on what they are doing. Because the way things stand right now, in Italy, very much Mr. Berlusconi controls what goes out on the airwaves and over the cable. And in North America, and many other places, it's Mr. Murdoch. And this, of course, means essentially we're not living in a democracy. Of course, industrial democracy, co-decision, needs to ultimately be extended to all workers in all jobs everywhere. All right, thank you for watching and listening, and I welcome your comments.